So I'd like to level set with you for a moment. I'm not very good at most things in life. I'm just not. Don't understand electronics. I don't get along with people. I don't know anything about animals either. They're kind of the same thing to me. I don't understand any of it. Um, Not very good at my job, probably. That's what gets me placed on overnights. But one thing this noggin of mine can do is keep little nuggets of things and make connections between them. That's kind of the only thing that I have any skill at doing in life. And this poem, Ode to Melancholy, reminds me of one of my favorite stories from all of history, really, but particularly psychology and particularly biography in psychology, sort of a self experiment. This video will appear in two separate playlists on the channel. Number one being the poetry discussion playlist, now approaching 700 videos strong. Number two, 30 must-read poems, 30 poems that you know, got to read. All of the 30 must-read poems videos contain three separate sections. Number one, a quick bio of the author. Number two, a brief summary of the types of literature that author writes, and number three, an analysis of the poem itself. John Keats was born October 31st, 1795, in Moorgate, London. For reference, 1795 is a year that was fairly quiet everywhere in the world, with the exception of France, where, among other things, a young nationalist leader and future resident of Elba began to distinguish himself. Keats' father, George, was an ostler, or a stableman, taking care of horses. His mother, Frances, took care of the couple's children. In 1804, Keats' father fell from a horse and died while returning home after visiting the boys at school. 6 years later, his mother died of tuberculosis, and the children went to live with their grandmother. The same year, Keats would begin to study under Thomas Hammond to be a surgeon and an apothecary. And in 1815, he became a medical student at Guy's Hospital, where he would work prepping patients and assisting in surgery. Though he seemed very fit for this work and excelled early, his passion was for poetry, and his work left less and less time for writing, and the young man felt letters leaving him. Still, in 1816, Keats became a licensed apothecary. It seems the official title may have been a bit of a breaking point for him, and that same year his sonnet O Solitude was published in the Examiner. It was the first of several publications that year. The next year, in company with a growing reputation, a volume of his poetry titled simply Poems was published. It was not the success that he had probably hoped for, but it was progress. He changed publishers and got an advance towards his next volume. Working with this new publisher, Keats was introduced to many of the emerging talents on their roster. It was invigorating for Keats, who would swear off his medical profession in short order, and in early 1817 he moved to Hampstead. There he assisted in taking care of his brother, Tom, who had tuberculosis. But his own health was failing as well. And after falling ill again while taking care of his brother, it is thought he may have initially become infected with tuberculosis. Tom would die on December of that year. The combination of emotions running wild and sudden free time may have led to Keats' Annus Mirabilis in 1819, when he wrote Ode to a Grecian Urn, Ode to a Nightingale, Ode to Psyche, Ode on Indolence, and Ode to Melancholy, as well as to Autumn, Lamia, Isabella, and the Eve of St. Agnes, leading to his collection Lamia, Isabella, and the Eve of St. Agnes, and Other Poems, to be published in 1820. 1819 was also when he wrote La Belle Dame sans Merci and the play Otho the Great. 1819 and 1820 would see Keats' literary output explode, and several love interests would arise, but quickly declining health tortured him. Convinced of his own demise, Keats left for Rome. He would make it to Rome, but his condition was so poor, and owing that his diagnosis was attributed to mental exertion at the time, Keats was restless in his living hours. In addition to being ill, he seems to have also been hopeless, and referred to his remaining life as a posthumous existence. On February 23, 1821, John Keats died of tuberculosis, aged 25. John Keats is probably best known for writing odes. So, what is an ode? A formal, often ceremonious lyric poem that addresses and often celebrates a person, place, thing, or idea. Its stanza forms vary. The Greek or Pindaric ode was a public poem usually set to music that celebrated athletic victories. English odes written in the Pindaric tradition include Thomas Gray's The Progress of Poesy, a Pindaric ode, and William Wordsworth's Ode, Imitations of Immortality from Reflections of Early Childhood. Horatian odes, after the Latin poet Horace, were written in quatrains in a more philosophical contemplative manner. See Andrew Marvell's Horatian Ode upon Cromwell's return from Ireland. The Sapphic Ode consists of quatrains, 3 11-syllable lines, and a final 5-syllable line, unrhyming but with strict meter. See Algernon Charles Swinburne's Sapphics. The odes of the English Romantic poets vary in stanza form. They often address an intense emotion at the onset of a personal crisis, or celebrate an object or image that leads to revelation. No, go not to Leith, neither twist wolfsbane tight-rooted for its poisonous wine, nor suffer thy pale forehead to be kissed by nightshade ruby grape of Proserpine. Make not your rosary of yew-berries, nor let the beetle nor the death-moth be your mournful Psyche, nor the downy owl a partner in your sorrow's mysteries. For shade to shade will come too drowsily, and drown the wakeful anguish of the soul. But when the melancholy fit shall fall sudden from heaven like a weeping cloud, that fosters the droop-headed flowers all, and hides the green hill in an April shroud, then glut thy sorrow on a morning rose, or on the rainbow of the salt sand wave, or on the wealth of globed peonies, or, if thy mistress some rich anger shows, imprison her soft hand and let her rave, and feed deep, deep upon her peerless eyes. She dwells with beauty, beauty that must die, and joy whose hand is ever at his lips, bidding adieu and aching pleasure nigh, turning to poison while the bee-mouth sips. Aye, in the very temple of delight, veiled melancholy has her sovereign shrine, though seen of none save him whose strenuous tongue can burst joy's grape against his palate fine. His soul shall taste the sadness of her might, and be among her cloudy trophies hung. So I thought sort of a good place to start this would be to go through the poem, not really line by line, but close to line by line, and look at some of the sort of imagery and stuff that's in here, because there's a big talking point, very interesting in my opinion, that I want to get to at the end of this. No, no, go not to Lath, neither twist wolf's bane, tight-rooted for its poisonous wine. Lath is a river in Greek mythology. It is a river of the underworld. If you drink from it, you lose your memory. Wolf's bane, poisonous wine, etc. Nightshade is a poison. Proserpine is a queen of the underworld. I think you can quickly see where we're going here. Yewberries, poisonous. Down here, for shade to shade will come too drowsily and drown the wakeful anguish of the soul. If you do any of these things, it will kill you to death. It will not be good for you. You will fall too far. When the melancholy fit shall fall sudden from heaven like a weeping cloud, that fosters the droop-headed flowers all, and hides the green hill in April shroud. Basically, what this is saying is, when the weather storms the way that your mood does, then what you do, so you've got this stormy mood. Well, when the weather is that stormy, what you do is that you live off of the flowers and rainbows that follow. So your mood will have this wet season, your mood will have this stormy season, and you just have to remember that following those storms, you will live off of the flowers and the rainbows that form because of it. Kind of one of the art, there is no light without dark type of argument, but a little bit more substantial than that, I believe. And this is interesting here. Or if thy mistress some rich anger shows, imprison her soft hand, and let her rave, and feed deep upon her peerless eyes. If your girl is causing you problems, you just make intimidating eye contact. That's the key. No, I think that what's actually going on here is that we are referring to the melancholy as the mistress. If your melancholy is aggressive, take it by the hand. Let that melancholy go, baby, and look that melancholy in the eyes. And we're coming back to this. We are coming back to this. And then she dwells in beauty. She dwells with beauty, beauty that must die. Melancholy and beauty both die. Don't forget that. So you have to savor the time that you have with beauty. You have to savor the time that you have with melancholy. Interesting down here, turning to poison while the bee mouth sips. Where am I at here? No, I'm in the wrong place here. I apologize. Aye, in the very temple of delight, veiled melancholy has her sovereign shrine. Melancholy is a queen and has her own empire. That is an interesting recognition to make, that this is a real thing, this is a real place, and melancholy owns this place. You are just a visitor, right? Though seen of none, save him whose strenuous tongue can burst joy's grape against his palate fine. A little bit sexual, not gonna lie. But I think what we're talking about here is, if you become a connoisseur of the melancholy, if you become a connoisseur of those things which are the darkness of the human soul, you learn how to differentiate those tastes on your tongue, you can master it. His soul shalt taste the sadness of her might, and be among her cloudy trophies hung. If you can't do that, if you can't learn to tame, learn to differentiate, learn to appreciate the melancholy itself, then it will claim you. So, this is where I want to talk. This up here. Or if thy mistress some rich anger shows, imprison her soft hand and let her rave, and feed deep, deep upon her peerless eyes. Assuming that the mistress in question is the melancholy, what this passage seems to be suggesting is that there will be moments when what we should do is go with it. You feel that melancholy coming on, you feel that darkness of the soul. You know, it's interesting. You wake up and you feel happy for some reason, for no reason. Sometimes that happens to some people, I guess. And you just go with it. It's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good day. I wake up, I feel just fine. I'm not going to go into a full Freddie Mercury quote, but you understand what I'm saying. You make the decision to go into that feeling. Really, they're feelings. So anytime you feel anything, you're making the decision to go into it. There are times where you wake up and you're having a rough go. You're having a rough go because you're deciding to go with it. It could just be a bad day happening to a happy person, but you become miserable for yourself. Carl Jung. Probably you know who Carl Jung is, but if not, he's a guy who is acclaimed for his work in psychology, among other things, but mainly the sort of realm into which his name gets thrown around is psychology. And one of the things that, as I understand it, he did 1913, I believe. Well, I've got it down. Anyway, we'll get to it in a moment. But he had a breaking up with Freud. Freud was his mentor, and Freud said, screw you. And because of this, Jung was his student. Jung was where he learned everything, and all of a sudden, the guy from whom he learned everything was kind of going, shove off, sailor. He felt a depression coming on. And as I understand it, he felt this coming on and decided, I'm going to run with it. I'm going to run with it. We're going to see what happens here. Which is inconceivable in today's world with all of the drugs that get thrown at this thing called depression, right? Someone feels a depression coming on and they get 3 and 4 prescriptions, but it didn't used to be that way. Still, it used to be really that you didn't want to be depressed. So there was time periods like in America, like the 1880s, 1860s, 1880s, it was sort of in vogue to be dour. It was sort of in vogue, melancholia, things like that. The era of Poe, basically. But he decided, I'm really going to let this thing go. We're going to see what happens here. We're going to weather this storm. We're going to set sail, baby. I see this storm on the horizon, and we're going to set sail. So I asked, and I know this is a sin, but I asked ChatGPT for a summary of this event in Jung's life. Why am I talking about this? During this time in his life, that mistress showed rich anger, and he took her by the hand, let her rave, and stared her straight in the eyes. That is what he did in these moments at this time in his life. And as ChatGPT lets us know, around 1913, Carl Jung felt a deep psychological disturbance rising within him. Visions, dreams, and inner voices. So a little bit different than I have heard it. As I hear it, he thought he was on a schizophrenic break. He thought he was turning schizophrenic. Seemed irrational, even dangerous. Rather than resist this looming breakdown, Jung made a radical decision. He would go with it. He withdrew from public life, declined lectures, and let himself descend into a confrontation with the unconscious. He wasn't passively where did I get heavily? He wasn't passively overcome. He actively submitted, believing that something essential waited in the depths. I had to find out what the unconscious was up to, he later wrote. During this period, Jung experienced vivid hallucinations and dialogues with mythic figures, Elijah, Salome, Philemon, who emerged unbidden from his psyche. He recorded these encounters in the Red Book, a richly illustrated symbolic journal that documented his descent. This was not madness, Jung insisted, but a deliberate descent into the collective unconscious. Well, that's what the mad would tell you, isn't it? A kind of visionary initiation. He practiced active imagination, engaging his inner figures in real conversations, allowing symbolic content to surface without censorship. What came out of this period was nothing less than the foundation of analytical psychology. The experience birthed his theories of archetypes, the collective unconscious, individuation, and the shadow. Basically, all of Jung's biggest works came because he said, "This is awful. Let's see where it goes." Jung believed his suffering had a purpose: to reconnect modern consciousness with ancient mythic figures. By going through the darkness rather than around it, Jung became a cartographer of the psyche. He later said, "Only what is truly oneself has the power to heal." From the descent came a system that would help others do the same. Absolute mad lad, Carl Jung. But I think that this is sort of I don't want to say telling. Telling is not profound enough. But it is sort of perhaps descriptive of the human experience that these two individuals came to the same talking points, separated by all this time. I don't know if Jung ever read this poem. Certainly, you're reading an author writing this poem who never read Jung, right? So this idea that seems radical, you feel that darkness coming on, and you say, "Yeah, man, let's do it." I'm sorry, what? Let's go. Let's go. Let's see where it goes. Let's see where it leads. I've got a flashlight. I got my umbrella. I've got some hiking boots. Let's see where this thing goes. Absolutely wild poem here. Absolutely wild interpretation of Jung. Absolutely wild sort of idea, radical idea that, yeah, let's go ahead and go with this darkness. Anyway, guys, that is all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.